Real Madrid made sure that as a club they were synonymous with Europe's premier club competition, winning the first 5 European Cups, thus drastically increasing expectations. Now in the 21st century, they have made the tournament theirs once more. Real Madrid have won it 15 times in total. They are the undisputed kings of Europe. However, between their 6th and 7th titles, there was an excruciating and embarrassing drought of 3 decades. Legendary strikers like Emilio Butragueno and Hugo Sanchez tried and failed to fire them back to glory. Fans were desperate to see their team complete La Septima. At the same time, fears that they would never do so were rising every year. In 1998, salvation came from an unlikely source, and one who also managed to piss off generations of Barca fans in the process. Predrag Mijatovic was born on 19th of January 1969 in Titograd, Montenegro, what is known today as Podgorica. As a boy, Mijatovic had no interest in any other toy than a ball. He had one glued to his feet at all times, and as he got a new one every birthday and Christmas, he built up a collection of balls of all different sizes and materials. So obsessed was he that his eldest sister remarked to their parents, "This little one will be a footballer or he will be a nobody." His childhood growing up in Titograd was a beautiful and carefree one. All day long he would play sports and socialise with his friends. His early experiences playing football on the streets would shape his career as an adult. Never daring to believe that football would one day be his profession, he trained out of joy and love for the game. He played on rough, uneven surfaces, sometimes barefoot. The ball would bounce unpredictably, and Mijatovic quickly learned to react to these changes of direction. There were no referees and the tackles were tough. Fights frequently broke out. These hard conditions would make everything seem easier for him later on. He joined Butragueno Titograd in 1986 and made his debut at the age of 18 in August 1987 when he scored the opening goal of a 3-0 victory over FK Sloboda Tuzla. 2 months later, and he was part of possibly the greatest moment in Yugoslav football history. We love to talk about golden generations in international football, but perhaps we have never seen one as bright as the team Yugoslavia brought to the Under-20 World Cup in Chile. Gordon Petric, Branko Brnovic, Robert Prosinecki, Zvonimir Boban, Davor Šuker and Mijatovic. There were future stars all over the pitch. The youngest player in the team at just 18, Mijatovic scored 3 goals, helping his side to win the tournament. Although, after being sent off for a scuffle with East Germany's Matthias Sammer in the semi, Mijatovic was suspended for the final. In his absence, Yugoslavia needed penalties to beat West Germany. Every player involved in that glorious triumph now had the eyes of the whole of Yugoslavia upon them, and they were the names on everyone's lips. The doors of opportunity opened up for all of them, and the chance of a great career awaited all those who were ready to step through. Budućnost had a very strong team when Mijatovic arrived. The undoubted jewel of the Budućnost crown was Dejan Savicevic. Eugenio had already been there for 4 years and was expected to move on to a bigger club soon. In 1988, he left and joined Red Star Belgrade. The extremely talented young Mijatovic was earmarked by the press and fans to be Savicevic's successor. This was perhaps an unfair amount of pressure to place on such young shoulders. Although Mijatovic had great technique and ball-carrying abilities, he didn't quite possess the same crowd-pleasing flair and showmanship as Savicevic. Still, he impressed, and 2 years after he joined Budućnost, he was on the move. It initially seemed that his destination would be Croatia and coastal club Hajduk Split. A significant pre-contract down payment had even been given to the player. All that was left was for the striker to sign on the dotted line. However, Mijatovic changed his mind, returned every penny to the furious director and signed instead for Partizan Belgrade. The reason for this sudden change of heart? Well, there was a connection between Partizan and the military, and they told Mijatovic and his family there will soon be changes in the structure of the country, the structure of the state. Essentially, they were being told that war was coming, and Croatia might not be the safest place for him to move to. Mijatovic arrived in Belgrade as the Yugoslav First League's all-time record transfer, and one of the most highly rated young talents in the country. An excellent goal on his debut against former club Budućnost was an encouraging sign. However, he struggled to get into his stride and find his shooting boots as he got himself acclimated with a new city and a new team. He failed to score in the remaining 14 league games of the season. His scoring drought continued for the national team at the Under-21 European Championships, though this was more because of how he was utilised. Playing in a deep role, he was a supporting act for Šuker and Alen Boksic, and it was a part he played well. His industry, tenacity, dribbling, passing, movement and crossing created good chances for his team. Yugoslavia beat Bulgaria and Italy to set up a final with the Soviet Union, who they were soundly thumped by 7-3 across 2 legs. Starting from the 1991 season, things finally started to come together at club level for Mijatovic, and across 3 seasons he developed into a consistent and reliable goalscorer, emerging as one of the best players in the country. He was named Yugoslavia's Player of the Year in 92-93. The highlight of that time was probably his goal in the second leg of the final of the last ever Yugoslav Cup, which was vital in securing a 3-2 aggregate victory over rivals Red Star. He was also a key player in the 92-93 season, dazzling fans with stunning performances and becoming top scorer with 17 in the new Yugoslav First League, which, with the country breaking apart and embroiled in war, consisted only of teams from Serbia and Montenegro. Partizan finished as champions, 14 points ahead of Red Star. By 93, Mijatovic had long since been on the radar of top European clubs. The likes of Atletico Madrid and Juventus had him watched and held talks with him. Real Madrid were also keen, but they were now cautious when it came to acquiring talent from Yugoslavia, having been burned by the signing of Robert Prosinecki in 1991. A key member of Red Star's European Cup winning team of 1991, Prosinecki was an outrageously technically gifted and skillful attacking midfielder with an eye for goal, and was perhaps the brightest light of that World Cup winning under-20 squad. Real shelled out 15 million euros for him, and for a number of reasons, namely injuries, he ended up being a bit of a flop. In the end, it was Valencia who took the chance on Mijatovic and signed him for 2.1 million euros. Mijatovic himself had been convinced to join Valencia after he learned that his childhood hero Mario Kempes had played for them. As a 9-year-old, Mijatovic had been glued to his TV, transfixed and inspired as El Matador fired Argentina to the 1978 World Cup, ending as the tournament's top scorer. Although he had been a big star in Belgrade, he arrived in Spain as a nobody. So little was known about him that the first question in his unveiling press conference was, "What position do you play?" "I'm fast, technically good. I'm a second striker," Mijatovic replied. Given the fact that Valencia had tried and failed to sign Romario that summer, ending up with this virtual unknown from Montenegro while Barca bagged themselves a brilliant Brazilian was scant consolation for the fans. It wasn't long before he won them over though. Used to playing out wide or in a more withdrawn role for both Partizan and Yugoslavia, Mijatovic was an extremely versatile forward. He was happy to push out to either flank, where he had the skill and confidence to take on his man, the pace to skip past them, and the vision to fire across into the mixer. He would drop deep to collect possession and dribble forward to start attacks. He was a hard worker and didn't mind tracking back and mucking in with defending when the situation called for it. Strong with a great first touch, he was adept at playing with his back to goal. You could fire passes into him, which he would control while holding off defenders before bringing a teammate into play with his great range of passing. If some of his colleagues had been as clinical as Mijatovic was, then he would have had many more assists for Valencia, because Mijatovic brought his scoring form with him from Serbia, and his 16 and 12 La Liga goals respectively in his first 2 seasons in Spain put him up there with the best forwards in the league. Arguably, the pick of those strikes was a sensational free kick against Deportivo La Coruña in the final of the Copa del Rey to level the match at 1-1.
Es quien lanza y gol. Acaba de empatar el partido el Valencia.
Torrential rain had already made conditions difficult in the second half, but 10 minutes after Mijatovic's goal, the hailstones started lashing down and the match was abandoned. It was most unfortunate for Valencia, as they had the momentum at that point, and 3 days later when the match was restarted from the 79-minute mark, Deportivo scored the winner within 60 seconds. As impressive as those first 2 seasons had been, they turned out to be simply the appetizer for a smorgasbord of goals that Mijatovic served up in the 95-96 campaign. The arrival of manager Luis Aragonés in the summer was instrumental in helping Mijatovic to take his game to the next level. In their first meeting at the team hotel, Aragonés approached Mijatovic and said, "I've been told you're the best player on the team. Is that true?" When Peja nodded yes in response, Aragonés said, "Well, I'm going to demand more from you than anyone else." The motivational effect this had on Mijatovic, who knew he had so much to give, was remarkable, and he laid waste to La Liga that year.
Mendieta, balón pasado, Mijatovic. ¡Tremendo! ¡Gol del Valencia, Mijatovic!
Hacia el punto de penalti, allá va a quedar Mijatovic. Y hace el tercer gol del Valencia, Peja Mijatovic, siempre con el olfato, con la caña preparada. El montenegrino hace que suba el tercer gol del Valencia al marcador.
Posibilidad de gol clarísima, Mijatovic lanza gol. Gol del Valencia, Mijatovic.
Ahí está Peja Mijatovic delante del Santi, va a encarar el 1 contra 1, Mijatovic mete el centro y el gol en propia meta.
His 28 Primera Division goals and 32 in all competitions helped Valencia to finish second, 4 points behind Atletico Madrid after being involved in their first title race for 20 years. He finished as runner-up in the battle for the Pichichi Trophy, with 3 goals less than Juan Antonio Pizzi, and he was voted as La Liga's best foreign player of the season. In a poetic coincidence, 28 was the exact same number his boyhood icon Kempes had scored for Valencia in 78, although that had been enough to make him the league's top scorer back then. However, rather than the Valencia fans hailing Mijatovic for his iconic contributions that year, they were cursing his name by the time the season drew to a close. While Real Madrid had decided to exercise caution and patience when Mijatovic was at Partizan, his performances at Valencia had showed that he was not a risk at all, but rather a sure thing that they simply had to bring to the Bernabeu. The rumours that Real were trying to poach Mijatovic first hit the press in February 1996. He told a meeting of the Valencia supporters club that he wouldn't be leaving. On 9th of March, he was cheered off the pitch like a hero as he was replaced minutes after he completed a brace in a famous 4-1 victory over Barcelona at the Mestalla. A few days later, and it was officially announced. From June 96, Peja Mijatovic would become a Real Madrid player. Valencia president Paco Roig had refused to negotiate with Los Blancos, and so they paid the release clause of 1.47 billion pesetas, roughly 9.1 million euros. The reaction was one of fury, and for the remaining 3 months, Mijatovic received a hostile reception at home games. He even had to have bodyguards for his protection. Again, it was Aragonés who helped him through this difficult time, assuring him that he had made the best sporting decision and that he would conquer the footballing world at Real. To this day, Mijatovic is full of regret for how his time at Valencia came to an end. I've always said that time was crucial in my career. It was there that I developed as a person and as a player. People loved me at the club for many years, and I decided to leave, and that produced an anger that hasn't been resolved. I understand the situation, but you have to keep in mind that I was at Valencia for 3 years. I decided to leave because I wanted to win titles, and I thought it would be difficult there and that at Madrid I would achieve it. A disastrous 95-96 campaign in which Real Madrid finished 7th and failed to qualify for European competition for only the 2nd time in their history was a new low, and President Lorenzo Sanz decided to come out firing with both barrels and sanctioned a barrage of signings. First, they secured a new man in the dugout. Fabio Capello, a managerial god after his time at AC Milan, was installed. Real then continued their raid on Serie A's best and brightest, snapping up Clarence Seedorf, Christian Panucci and Roberto Carlos. In terms of striker signings, the biggest splash worldwide was made by Barcelona, who broke the transfer record to bring in Ronaldo. While Barcelona were betting the house on monstrous, previously unseen levels of individual brilliance, Los Blancos went for 2 of the league's most consistent forwards. To partner Mijatovic, Croatian hitman Davor Šuker was brought in from Sevilla, for whom he had scored 76 Primera Division goals in 153 appearances. Mijatovic and Šuker knew each other well. They had been roommates for the Yugoslavian national team since their teens. The bond they had formed was unbreakable. Bitter, brutal and bloody war had engendered hatred and contempt between their two nations, but Šuker and Mijatovic's relationship held strong and remained unaffected. "We have known each other all our lives. We are friends and we are used to winning and winning titles together," Šuker told concerned members of the press at his unveiling. "Davor and I are proof that friendship knows no boundaries," said Mijatovic. Megastars in their homelands, Šuker and Mijatovic became symbols of respect, tolerance and acceptance. Putting questions of potential conflicts aside, a 27-year-old Mijatovic, supremely confident in his own abilities, told the media, "I know what the fans expect from me. I've signed a contract for 5 years, and I won't be satisfied if we don't win a trophy every year, including at least 2 championships and the European Cup." Šuker and Mijatovic brought their closeness off the pitch onto the field for Los Blancos, and their connections seemed to spread throughout the whole team as the new arrivals instantly clicked under the new manager. Alongside Raúl, Mijatovic and Šuker formed the best front line in the league. They had a deep understanding from the off, and some of their movement, positional interchanging and link-up play that season was breathtaking.
Davor Šuker puede apoyarse en el propio Raúl, ahí está. Raúl tiene que jugar con la izquierda, va a llegar Mijatovic, se puede llegar Raúl,
Sedor adelanta para Šuker, buen balón para Mijatovic, Mijatovic que se la prepara, puede lanzar, Mijatovic, gol, Mijatovic, balón interior para Šuker, que puede lanzar, Šuker, golazo de Šuker. En Madrid, que el próximo martes tiene un compromiso súper complicado, bueno, en teoría en la Romareda, el quinto.
Está Mauro, puede llegar Šuker, intenta llevar Mijatovic, la pelota para Mijatovic, gol. Ahí llega Mijatovic, este sí que tiene peligro, juega para Raúl. Gol de Raúl. Y ahí está Raúl. Consiguió sacar el centro Šuker hacia Mijatovic. Controla Mijatovic, media vuelta.
With 2 natural-born killers by his side, Pedja's assist tally finally accurately reflected the wonderful, selfless work he put in to create chances for his team, and he set up 11 goals to go with the 14 he scored himself in the league. Barcelona's over-reliance on Ronaldo to pull something magical out of the hat was laid bare in the first El Clásico of the season at the Bernabeu, where Los Blancos showed that teamwork and togetherness was the way forward. Ronaldo was nullified, and Real's front 3 were electric, with Mijatovic's goal to make it 2-0 being one of the best of the season.
Pecha Mijatovic, ahí juega con Davor Šuker, ese es Clarence Seedorf que se la pone a Pecha Mijatovic, vaya jugada del Real Madrid, Pecha Mijatovic, golazo del Real Madrid, golazo de Pecha, ha marcado Mijatovic, golazo del Real Madrid, qué golazo de Pecha Mijatovic.
In the end, it was a close title race that ended in victory for Real Madrid, 2 points better off than Barca. Mijatovic had already started to come good on his trophy promises. He had had a stunning debut season at Real Madrid, something that was recognised when he placed second in that year's Ballon d'Or, although some way behind winner Ronaldo. Mijatovic continued to prove himself an important signing in his second season. Although it was a poor campaign domestically for Los Blancos, who finished 4th in the league that season, it was in the Champions League that destiny was calling Pedja's name. However, throughout the competition, you wouldn't have got the sense that it was the man from Montenegro who was set to end Madrid's 32-year European hoodoo. He failed to score or assist once in the 7 games he played leading up to the final with Juventus. It is an almost unfathomable idea for the modern football fan, but Madrid were massive underdogs going into this. Under new manager Jupp Heynckes, Real had been disappointing. They finished 11 points behind Barca in the league. They had been knocked out of the Copa del Rey in the 4th round by 2nd division side Alaves. Juventus, on the other hand, were a juggernaut. They had just won their 3rd Scudetto in 4 years. It was their 3rd Champions League final on the bounce, having won it in 1996. We were all a bit worried, I have to say, because in the league that year we hadn't really played well, Mijatovic said. However, there were signs and omens. Madrid defender Fernando Sanz had had a prophetic dream the night before the final that Mijatovic would score. Saying that though, the Montenegrin forward probably shouldn't have even been in the starting 11. Mijatovic had pulled a calf muscle in training before the match. He kept this info to himself though, confiding only in physio Pedro Chueca, telling him, "Hey Pedro, look, this has happened and you have to help me recover, because if you don't, I'll kill you." A few of the players found out about it, but the news never filtered through to Heynckes, thankfully, because the manager would have left Mijatovic out if he had known. Unlike some finals, there wasn't a hint of caginess, and this was a thrilling affair from the off, sprinkled with spine-tingling moments of individual class.
Raúl, Morientes, buen balón de Morientes, Raúl y Dilivio, la ha llevado muy bien ahí Raúl, Dilivio, Roberto Carlos, Mijatovic.
For the opening 20 minutes, Zidane was left in oceans of space and was free to pull the strings.
Intenta salir desde el Piero, ha recuperado Zidane para la Juve. Zidane, vaya ritmo que ha empezado el partido, ¿eh? Ha recuperado la Juve, Zidane, siempre de los defensores, Zidane.
Otra vez.
Ahí el balón para Zidane, David, el Piero para Zidane. Se ha quedado dormido ahí un poco el Madrid. Y vaya.
Fernando Hierro, though, was immense, and the defensive titan constantly stepped out to frustrate Inzaghi and Del Piero.
Que bien ha cortado Hierro porque la pelota iba para Inzaghi. Zidane para Del Piero, Hierro ahora con él. El balón hacia Inzaghi, que bien de nuevo Hierro. Del Piero se la ha quitado muy bien ahí Hierro.
As Real figured out they should put more pressure on Zidane, his influence waned, and Madrid grew into the game.
Ha ido muy bien Mijatovic de Torricelli, están Raúl y Morientes. Hacia Raúl. ¡Qué
In a moment of controversy, Edgar Davids maybe should have got a second yellow just before half-time. Madrid were on the front foot at the start of the second half, with Mijatovic showing his skills. Juventus still posed a threat, of course, and Inzaghi nearly scored a screamer. He also got the break of the ball after a free kick, but his effort was tame and right of the keeper. Then, on 67 minutes, it was time for Mijatovic.
Roberto Carlos, Mijatovic! ¡Gol!
His celebration was iconic, running towards the bench, pointing at Fernando Sanz, the Nostradamus who had foreseen this moment. Juventus pushed for an equaliser, and it should have come through Edgar Davids, who got the hard part right, wriggling his way into the box only to shoot straight down the keeper's gullet. There was jubilation at the final whistle, as Real Madrid had finally ended an excruciating 32-year wait to finally be crowned champions of Europe for the 7th time, and the goal that had sealed it turned out to be one of the most controversial in the competition's history. Look in the comment sections of any video showing the goal and you will see the same debate raging. The main objection is that it was offside. To this day, Barcelona fans vehemently maintain that Real Madrid won their Septima by cheating. Marcello Lippi, Alessio Tacchinardi and others from the Juventus camp are adamant it was offside. Dani Alves even gave his 2 pennies in 2017, saying Real Madrid won the Champions League with an illegal goal, to which Mijatovic hit back, "I don't care about the opinion of Dani Alves and the supporters of Juventus. The Italians justify a defeat with the offside." But it wasn't. Dani Alves is a great footballer, but he's never been very intelligent with his comments. A debate within the debate has also rumbled on for years. The ball hit a Juventus player on the way to Mijatovic, so it couldn't have been offside. Some people say that wasn't the rule back in '98. Others say it was. Others still argue that the Juventus player did not deliberately play the ball. The main defense of the goal is that, out of the shot of any of the camera angles, Pessotto is playing Mijatovic onside. I feel the biggest smoking gun comes from the fact that not a single Juventus player protested. If they had any feeling it was offside, they would have surely surrounded the referee, but they did not. They accepted the goal. At the end of the day, it's really a moot point. The goal was given. Juventus had chances to equalise. They didn't take them. Real Madrid won. Football is a beautiful game and can deliver us the highest, most euphoric of highs. Those few seconds after scoring were sheer happiness. "I have never felt such a feeling in my life," Mijatovic said of his winner. But what makes the sport so intoxicating is how it can also plunge us to the pits with the lowest, cruelest of lows. Very few players have got to experience both of these extremes in such a short space of time, as just a few months after he had become the glorious hero of Madrid, everything came crashing down upon him, and he was the villain for his nation. Neither Serbia nor Montenegro had competed in a major tournament since the 1990 World Cup as part of the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Now known as the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, a rump state consisting only of the 2 nations, they were to make their return to the international stage, having qualified for the 98 World Cup in France. And Mijatovic was one of the main reasons they got there. He was a man possessed in the qualifiers and scored 14 goals. Remarkably, half of those came in the 2 matches against Hungary. With a talented and well-rounded squad, Yugoslavia were tipped by many to make a deep run in the competition. And they looked like they would do just that, breezing through a group of Iran, Germany and the United States unbeaten. In the first knockout round, they faced a very stern test, the Netherlands. The Clockwork Orange took the lead through Dennis Bergkamp. Yugoslavia equalised just after the restart through Komljenovic.
Makes it 1-1.
3 minutes later, Yapstam tugged on Jugovic's shirt in the box and a penalty was awarded. Naturally, the man who had shown himself to have ice running through his veins against Juventus stepped up to take it for his country.
Oh, he's back off the underside of the crossbar. Mijatovic Prečka!
Some say that crossbar in Toulouse is still rattling to this day. Immediately after the miss, Dennis Bergkamp could count himself fortunate to not even have been booked for a stamp on Mihailovic down the other end. The wind had been taken out of Yugoslavia's sails and they scarcely had a sight of goal as the Dutch dominated. Just as it looked to be heading to extra time, Yugoslav hearts were broken in the 93rd minute by Edgar Davids. If the goal for Real in the final of the Champions League was the happiest moment in my sports career, then the penalty in Toulouse is my most disgusting one, which I will never forget. I took responsibility, and it happened that a month after I scored the goal that brought Real the Champions League, I went from a hero to the biggest tragedy. And that penalty often followed me later, especially when I would come home to my country. There was, how did you miss it? They still tell me to this day, I wish you had scored that penalty. But what can I do? I accepted that miss as a part of life, Mijatovic reflected later. Despite his heroics in the Champions League final, Peja soon found himself behind Raúl and Morientes in the pecking order at Real Madrid. When he played, it was frequently out on the wing, and as such, he only managed 5 league goals that season. After a disappointing campaign, he was sold to Fiorentina. Mijatovic was only a squad player in his 3 seasons in Italy. He fell victim to his own versatility and was frequently deployed as a midfielder. As he was now in his 30s, he often suffered from niggling and lingering injuries. He added the Coppa Italia to his list of honours in 2001, although he was an unused substitute for the semis and the final. With injuries taking their toll, he retired from football in 2003 at the age of 34 after a year playing in Spain's Segunda Division with Levante. Predrag Mijatovic is a Real Madrid hero. He provided the decisive contribution in one of the most important victories in their history. In doing so, he helped return them to the promised land of European success after decades of failure. His goal laid the foundations for a remarkable era of Champions League dominance for Real. The strike itself summed up everything good about Pedra's game: the anticipation, the reactions, the instincts, the technique, the composure and the accuracy. It was Mijatovic in a nutshell. An outrageously talented but also selfless player, it is unfortunate that not only is Mijatovic not better remembered by the wider footballing world, but also that his defining moment is tainted by debate and controversy.